Assalamu alaikum, my dear sister Amina, brother. Thank you for joining me. And I want to also say my silent prayers for the elder ancestor, Idris al-Loma, that Amina has addressed here. And his picture is what I had the honor to put on the marquee for my show today. And you notice each week I try to put something of our ancestors in Africa, because no one knows of them, no one prays for them, and no one talks about them. Assalamu alaikum, my dear sister Abina. Thank you for showing up. So each week you'll see, inshallah, I'll have something on a personality from Africa. Because I want to honor our ancestors the best way I can. So this week I said I have Idris al-Loma. This ancestral brother was a sultan, a deluxe, a warrior, a mujahid, and he carved out his kingdom, and he fought against all forms of disbelief. And anybody reads about his history, you'll be proud. So with that said, I'll start here. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa Allah fi umri esta'in wa inhu Rahman Rahim wa Ghafur Rahim wa Muhammadun huwa Sayyidina wa Makmubana wa innana nahbuhu wa nahtabiruhu wa sunnatuhu wa shariatuhu nafidu salawatu rabbi taslimatihi alayhi. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh lil ikwani wa uqwati fi kulli makan. My dear brothers and sisters, thank you today for coming. I will be talking about a subject here that, especially in the West, there's a lot of ignorance, and also in some Muslim countries, because no one practices it, because no one has thought about it, and they feel that perhaps it's not important. It's called bay'ah in Arabic, and it's something that is required of every Muslim. Every Muslim. I don't care if he's sitting in Cleveland, Ohio, or Los Angeles, California, or if he's sitting here in Fez, Morocco. But this particular word has meaning to it, and the meaning is very important. Matter of fact, that every Muslim must do this. Let me get backdrop of this word bay'ah. Bay'ah means the pledge of allegiance, not the pledge of allegiance to what you may think, but it's an Islamic pledge. And the history behind this, and I'll give you kind of a short history of it. When the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and the Muslims took Mecca, and as you know the history there, the Arab pagan clans plus Christians and Jews teamed up against the Muslims, and Muslims prevailed. And our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam decided to take Mecca, because Mecca at that time was the center of all of idolatry. And so they took Mecca and created a state of Tawheed, started the Khilafah from that point. And in this time, Bilal, our ancestral brother, was given some words to say before these bay'ah took place. And he told the people that they had peace and security, and they also had amnesty for those who killed Muslims, those who worked against Muslims, those who mistreated the Muslims when they were in Mecca. And so he gave these words to Bilal to say, and he walked around and he yelled out these words, these beautiful words, which I repeated one time on another show. And that explains the victory of the Muslims over the Confederates, which were many. I mean, pagan Arabs, Christians, Jews alike, all teamed up together at that time to stop Islam. So, but at this point now, the Prophet ﷺ is going to take the bay'ah. And there was two versions of it. It's the man and the woman. And I'll give you the man version first. The men came to the Prophet ﷺ and they gave their bay'ah, their pledge of allegiance, meaning at this time that they would sema ta'a, meaning I would listen, obey your amr, his command, and then they gave the handshake. This established the sunnah. That this is sunnah. So when the ruler takes the pledge of allegiance, the new ruler takes the pledge of allegiance, the men come, they give their bay'ah, and then they give, to confirm the bay'ah is by the handshake. These sisters are not allowed to do the handshake, but they give their bay'ah as well to the Prophet ﷺ. In the early days, there were some differences in the sense that the Prophet ﷺ had them to swear on other things, because you got to remember something. At this time, most of the Arab villages and tribes they were something else, and the women were too, and there was a lot of them were involved in ungodly things, and he wanted to make sure that they understood about this bay'ah before he took their pledge and that they become Muslims on top of that. And he wanted to make sure. And some of the questions that were asked, if they would swear that they would uphold to that, were fornication was one, slander, because it was prevalent at the time among the sisters before they became Muslims. Among many of the pagan Arabs, the women were just as rough as the men, and they slandered one another. They slandered men. They fornicated. They drank. And also, one of the things that is funny, 1400 years ago, but they would also be married and they would get pregnant by another man, and then they will let their husbands take care of the baby and mislead him to think that the baby was theirs. So the Prophet ﷺ told them to swear that they wouldn't do all these things. Once they agreed to that, he took their word at it, and then he took their bay'ah, and they were now Muslims, and they were part of the ummah. I laid here two verses of the Quran in Surah 48, which there's others too that that gives you some indication of this bay'ah, how important it is, and that's for your research and also for your edification. There's other things I'll mention as well in this. The bay'ah to the Muslim is far different than anything that the Christians or the Jews or anyone else does. This is a Muslim thing. And I don't mean that in a harsh way, but this is a Muslim right that each Muslim must do, irrespective today of where we're at. And I'll get into this as we speak now. I don't see anyone else showing up, but all the people who are not in the chat who have shown up, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for coming to listen to your brother speak today on this important topic of the bay'ah, the Pledge of Allegiance. One of the things that we have to talk about as far as the pledge, as you know, in the West, we used to hear awful things about all the Muslim leaders. I mean, we heard ungodly things. And we as Muslims, we have to be very careful of that we do not slander the Muslim ruler unless we have clear evidence of that particular thing that you're saying. And so we have to be very careful of that, not to slander them, because, slander is a big thing. And remember one of my last talks, I talked about the slander of women and how the prophets, Islam, hate that. And he hates that, the slander of men as well. The Muslim leaders, they have a special covenant with subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if they break that covenant, it's on them. And so that's something that we have to understand here, is that the Muslim ruler, what you hear in LA or Washington, D.C. or on CNN, you have to be very careful unless they have the proof of it. And you remember something in the Quran, subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the evil ones, the ones who, the munafiqeen, the disbelievers who will make a statement against another Muslim. And he says, don't pass judgment until you check out that source. So when you see CNN or some other talking about a Muslim ruler, you be very careful that don't take their word for it. They better come up with proof, not something with some $100,000 some expert that they pull on some Tubab that comes on the station. He's making 100,000 to analyze and diagnose Muslims, and he'll make a comment. He can't even speak Arabic, as he's never even went to a Muslim country, and he's making a comment about Muslims and Muslim rulers. So you ignore that unless you have the proof. Unless you have the proof, then you can make your comment about that. But if you have no proof, don't slander the Muslim ruler until you do have that proof. Our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, made it a requirement that you make this particular covenant, the bay'ah, to a Muslim ruler. And he said this in a hadith, sahih, where if you died before giving this bay'ah to a Muslim ruler, imam, okay, I'll explain all this, to a Muslim ruler, you die in ignorance. That's right, you die in ignorance. That doesn't mean you die in kufr, but you die in pre-Islamic ignorance. Now, many scholars, and I'm not going to get into that because this subject in itself is about a week long, maybe even more, because there's many components to it. But you die in a state of ignorance. So the importance of the bay'ah is important that you understand that. And we'll get into that because those in the West are concerned about that. Because I've heard and I know things even when I was there that astounded me because they didn't know, because no one taught them. They didn't have no education, and they thought that they could make this type of pledge to anyone. It's not the case. And so as I talked about this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ made it clear. This is in Sahih Muslim about this hadith and the book of faith. And there's also others where Bukhari in the book of leadership. You can find that in there, 1851, but that's in Arabic. 1851 is the number, but it's easy to find. You put the book of leadership and you'll find it, and you'll read what the Prophet ﷺ has said about this issue. And it's a scary issue in a sense too, because you living in California, you living in Texas, you living in Mobile, Alabama, or Jackson, Mississippi, and you're Muslim. And then someone come to you and tell you, hey, Yahya, did you make your bay'ah yet? I'm going to look at you, say, what are you talking about? And so this is a issue that has to be brought up because it's wajib on every person that they would have to make this bay'ah. So how do we do it? And I explained the differences already about the woman when she gives her bay'ah. Now this is then. The woman today, I don't believe, have to do this. She gives her bay'ah to the ruler, and she give it verbally, but she should not give her hand, because the Prophet ﷺ refused to take the hand of a woman, because the prohibition of men touching women that are not their wives for obvious reason, because men are deeply attracted to women, and women have special holds on men, and you're touching their skin, gazing in their eyes, gazing upon their body. You know what I mean, because we're grown-ups here. We understand that. So the Prophet ﷺ did not shake the hand of the sisters at all. So that's sunnah. So the ruler takes he takes the bay'ah from the sister. He takes the bay'ah from her verbally, which is sunnah. She can do that. And Okay. Now, the bay'ah, how do you do this? The Muslim gives his bay'ah from his words, okay, and I'll talk about some of the words that are used. And he gives these words to the Muslim ruler. And at this time, then there's the handshake, of course, to confirm the obedience to his command. And so when you do this today, and I have to go back a little bit. When the Prophet ﷺ was living, they had very small verbiage in a way, where they said, I'll listen and obey, and I will and I'll follow your command. When the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and then the Khalifa and then Amir Mu'mineen began the Rashideen came about, they began to use other verbiage, and they would say basically that I give you my bay'ah on the Kitabillah, the Quran, and the Sunnah, okay, the ways of the Prophet. This way, it protects the Muslim, because he's saying, I'll give you my obedience as long as you follow Kitabillah and the Sunnah. That's right. And that you are not in sin, meaning that you do not order sinful orders, meaning a ruler in a country and he start telling the men and women to sell drugs or to sell ornaments, or go into trafficking, or go into prostitution or anything like this. You do not obey those orders. You do not, because when you give your obedience to the ruler, you give it on the Kitabillah and the Sunnah, which protects you. Because if he does something outside of it, that's on him. If he rules under that, he gets reward. If he does not do that, then he gets the punishment from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. But you're covered, because you're saying, I'm giving it on Kitabillah and the Sunnah. So this is an important aspect of the bay'ah now, okay? Important aspect of the bay'ah. And and the Prophet, in his wisdom, told the Muslims at the early stage, when they gave their bay'ah, he also said, as much as you can. Because we're human. You can't follow everything. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. He wants you to do what you can in your capacity to follow the command of Allah and his command. So that's important as well, that he said that, which also has established another sunnah, meaning that the Muslims, there's 1,000 orders, so to speak, 1,000. I forgot what the orders are, how many, there's many that he's commanded. There's no way you can complete all of them. You just cannot. You're a human being. You're going to make mistakes here and there. So he said, as much as you can. He made that preference after the bay'ah was given, which is beautiful. It's beautiful from our Prophet ﷺ, that he thought that much of us, and even for us in the future, that he said, look, you follow what you can, the best that you can, because some situations like in the West, it's very difficult. We know that it's very difficult to follow everything in Islam because of the climate and culture inside America. So he was aware of that, and he told us that. Now, I know you're saying, well, yeah, I live in the United States. I don't understand how I'm going to do this. Well, I'll get into that. I will give you what the Prophet ﷺ said about the importance of this. And I'll read this part in English to you. The Prophet said, it is obligatory for one to listen and obey the ruler's orders, unless these orders involve one disobedience to Allah. Remember what I told you? If the ruler suddenly comes to you and say, you know what? I'm going to start selling drugs. You don't have to obey that order, because that's in disobedience of Allah. But any act of disobedience to Allah is imposed. He should not listen to it or obey it. You see what the Prophet ﷺ said about the bay'ah. Yes, you give the bay'ah. Yes, you say sama ta'a, but you only do on what is called ma'ruf, the things that are good, not on something that's bad, that's haram, and to Allah. He doesn't want this, the drugs and everything. I'm just saying, if a ruler orders you to do these things, then you disobey that. You're not obligated to follow that. Then the Prophet ﷺ was talking to one of the Sahaba, and another one was in the background talking. And here's what he said to, again, about this bay'ah. We are the last one, but we will be the foremost to enter paradise. The Prophet added, he who obeys me obeys Allah. Interesting. Hear that, my dear brothers and sisters. Who obeys him obeys Allah. He who obeys me disobeys Allah. Okay, disobeys me. So if you disobey the Prophet's orders, you disobeying subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. You can't make distinction and say, well, I'll follow this. I like this particular thing what subhanahu wa ta'ala said. What the Prophet said, I won't follow. You can't do that. If you disobey the Prophet, then you disobey Allah. If you obey subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you obey the Prophet. So that's how it goes. And this is important for us as Muslims to know. And here he goes on to say this. He who obeys the chief, remember the imam, okay, the leader, obeys me. And he who disobeys the chief disobeys me. Again, the importance on the Muslim ruler. You obey him. If you disobey him, when he's giving you good, and he's, even if he's doing things wrong, but if he's calling you to the good, even though he may be doing something in the wrong, but you still must adhere to that. So if you go against him without right, and that's a whole different chapter in itself. You are wrong. You cannot do that. And here he goes again. He says, the imam is like a shelter for whose safety the Muslims should fight and where they should seek protection. If the imam orders people with righteousness and rules justly, then he will be rewarded for that. Remember what I said? If he does the opposite, he will be responsible for that. Remember, I said that again. If he uses maruf in Arabic, meaning the good, calling to the good, he gets reward for that big time. If he's calling the people too bad, he won't get his reward for that. He'll get his punishment for that, because he has a special covenant with subhanahu wa ta'ala that we don't have, because he's a ruler of the country. So he has a special covenant with subhanahu wa ta'ala to uphold. And that covenant will have to be fulfilled. And some of the things we may not see, that's between subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Muslim ruler. But what we see in the open, that's one thing. What's behind doors is another. And again, these are the Muslim rules. That's no different than me. If somebody comes over there to you, tell you, oh, Yahya, guess what he's doing? He's doing this. And you go and take that slander. How you know what I'm doing inside my house? You have no way of knowing. So as Muslims, we don't take that slander. We don't do that. Unless we have proof against our neighbor or against the ruler, we should not do it. Okay. Now, let me clarify something. We'll get into the deep stuff now. In the United States, I was told, and I know also, the Muslims are making bay'ah to Trump in the past. They made bay'ah to President Obama. They're making bay'ah to the new President Biden. Can a Muslim do this? No, he cannot. He cannot. A matter of fact, that may be, as some of their scholars of old have said, this is apostasy, to be honest. You can't join their armies either to go fight other Muslims. You cannot. You cannot sema al-ta'a. Remember, you cannot listen, obey, meaning making bay'ah to him. Now, let me clarify something. You live in the United States, all Muslims are required. Our Prophet said, who's living somewhere else You must obey the laws of that land. That's right. If they conflict with the Sharia, then you move away from that and come to a Muslim country to live. If you're called to do something that is against the Sharia Islamiyah, against the Islamic law, you move away from that. But you cannot give bay'ah to the disbelieving ruler of a Western country. You say, yeah, I don't understand it. He's a ruler too. Well, wait a minute. Remember I said about the words? The bay'ah is on what? Kitabillah and the Sunnah. Now, none of these presidents in the West obey the Quran, and they surely don't obey the Sunnah. So that they're out. You cannot give your bay'ah to them. You cannot, because that is required only from Muslims. Because when you go to him, and here's Trump standing in front of you, you walk up to him and you say, I give you my allegiance on Kitabillah and the Sunnah Rasuli. He's going to look at you and say, what are you talking about? Because they're not Muslims. So you can't give your bay'ah to them. Second, they do not rule by what subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. No, they don't. They rule by man-made laws that they create themselves, which is contrary to subhanahu wa ta'ala's law on this earth, what he puts down. So you cannot give that bay'ah to them. You cannot. You cannot give a bay'ah to a congressman or to a mayor of a city or to a senator or to some other good man. You cannot give your bay'ah to this person, nor can you give bay'ah to an imam of a masjid. You cannot. You cannot give your bay'ah to a scholar that's in a scholarly body inside the United States. So anyway, you cannot give your bay'ah to him either, unless he's working, which we don't have, for the Khalifa, which we do not have that. The Khalifa can designate certain people to have since he can't be there, they're traveling in this part. You can make your bay'ah to this particular minister for the Khalifa of the Caliphate, but we don't have that. So you don't have to worry about that now. So those things you cannot do. You cannot make that on any non-Muslim. You cannot make that for the imam of the masjid. You cannot make that for the imam of a Islamic group. You cannot. It's for a Muslim ruler only. You got to remember that. Muslim ruler only. You can only make bay'ah to him and his representatives. If he designate 30 people, women and men, to go out to collect the bay'ah, then it's okay. But to the imam of the masjid cannot do it. I see my sister here, Amina, has put down in English here some of the, so you can see what she said here, which is true. It's a serious matter. Now, I can't stress enough, my brothers and sisters, about this. When you do give your bay'ah and you give it, again, you give it what is on the good in Kitabillah and Sunnah, and not on the sin. Not on sin, meaning you will never follow the orders for something that's sinful. You cannot. Do not do that. You cannot. You cannot follow that. I don't know any ruler, to be honest with you, of the Muslims, and there's 57, who order their people to do wrong. I've never heard of that. Now, of course, CNN, MSNBC, many of the Islamic think tanks, they come up with all kinds of stuff. They'll say Muslim rulers are having people to run through the streets and kill people. I mean, you hear all kind of ridiculous things. Don't believe that. Don't believe that. I'm not saying that the Muslim countries are perfect. They are not. The rulers are human beings. Are they perfect? They're not. But some of the raw deals that they're getting from the West, it is raw. It's wrong. And they do that for obvious reasons, because they don't want you to come to the Muslim countries. That's why they talk against them, because they don't want you. They want you to stay there in the United States, where they can pick and shoot you when they want and put you in jail when they want. So this is they slander a lot of times the Muslim rulers, and that's why I said be careful of that. Now, the conditions of the bay'ah, as I explained, one is the time of the Prophet's Islam. That was a special case for Prophet. When the Prophet died, Islam, then the Amir Mu'minin began to come, of the Muslims, and then of course the verbiage again changed. Again, you go to the imam and he's standing in front of you, and you give your bay'ah to him. Bayati ala kitabillah wa ala sunnati rasuli alayhi salatu wasalam. You go and you give, I just said in Arabic, you go to give him that, and then I would give him my right hand and shake his hand to confirm my bay'ah. This is how it's done in modern times, if we had that, and in the times of the past. Again, I said, yes, I'm giving you my bay'ah if you adhere to Kitabillah and Sunnah Rasuli, okay, the Sunnah of our Prophet. That's what I give my bay'ah to, meaning that he must obey that as well, and you give, because if he do outside of that, you're covered. You're covered with subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're covered because you gave the bay'ah correctly on his law and the law of the Prophet, and not on the man, but on the book and on the Sunnah of the Prophet. Now, remember I told you, one of the things that is important in the bay'ah is the listening and the hearing. When you're inside the country of say Muslim land, and you know there's certain things that you have to do as a Muslim. That means you follow the laws. You don't cause problems with your brothers and sisters in the land. You don't make crime inside the land. You listen and obey the orders of your ruler, plus those who are responsible, like the Ashura Council, and they give their commands. Again, as long as those commands are within the Sunnah, within the Sharia, within the Sunnah, meaning Kitabillah, the Sunnah Rasuli, you have no problem. And you obey and you listen and you go from there. Now, there are some things that people have said, well, I cannot follow this particular Muslim ruler because he's in sin. And when I hear that, I said, well, how about you? Are you in sin? Every person is making sin. And I ask, if you have some proof of that, what do you know? Do you know this particular ruler? Are you following him? Have you been to his place? Have you seen him do these things? And 99.9% says no. So how can you say that? You need clear-cut evidence. Now, we know what's happened in recent time when one ruler, what he ordered, and now we have proof that he had somebody killed. We don't need to go into that, but you know what I'm talking about. That's different. That is a different situation because there's proof that something happened and he was involved in it. And that was, that caused the international scene. And for that country, it caused them a lot of backlash. Now we have proof of that. We have proof of a ruler giving orders to do something. And that's a different situation. But some of the other rulers, I won't get into them as well. But I know that I will say this. Here in Morocco, you notice one thing, and you do research on that. I don't know, have you noticed how peaceful basically it is here? And how the people go about their business. Is it perfect? No. Is there discussions and there's people that they feel that they have been mistreated? Yes. You'll find it everywhere in the world. But generally speaking, you look at this country here, you see it operating pretty smoothly. There's bumps in the road. But I'm telling you, as I say now, as a African American who was raised in LA, I can walk these streets 10, 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, and nobody's gonna come with a gun. And we have some robbery here and there, but they're petty theft stuff. You don't have the gangster stuff that you have that's going on in the United States. I would never go out, and I used to, I wouldn't go out in LA at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. You know how dangerous it is. I mean, you know how bad it is. Here in Morocco, it's not like that. You can walk out of your house 10, 11 o'clock. As a matter of fact, the graciousness of the people, they see you, they say, hey, you need a ride? Where are you going? And people may be getting off work or something like that, and they'll take you home. That's how gracious the Muslims are. I make that point to go to show you the Muslim countries, the differences between the Muslim countries and the Western countries. Why they have these differences. Because one is living within the boundaries of subhanahu wa ta'ala and the other one is not. And that's an important issue that we all know that's true. And you're born and raised in LA, I know the difficulties of walking around at nighttime. Okay, even not this. It doesn't have to be 10 o'clock. It could be 8 o'clock at night, and you walk around in certain areas. You're asking for it. We know that. So that is important. That I wanted to bring that out. Now, the issue, the Muslim. Oh, excuse me. Let me take time. Ojwini, salam alaikum, my dear sister. Thank you for showing up. And Sanika, Imperial Dynasty, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Salam alaikum. I want to get into one of the important topics. You're sitting there in LA as a Muslim. What should I do? How and who do I give my bay'ah to? This is something that's a heated debate right now. And I'm going to give you what has been said by the people of knowledge. Okay? Because I'm a student of knowledge. The people of knowledge have made many different talks about this particular subject, and they differ about this. Why? Because we Muslims are spread out all over the place, and there's not one ruler. We don't have a Amir Mu'mineen we don't have a Khalifa of a Islamic caliphate. We do not have that. So we have difficulties because we have Muslims in Europe, South America, Central America, United States, Canada, Asia. They're everywhere. And so each one is living in different areas under different rules, under different rulers. So what should you do? For the person who is sitting in the West Indies, in Jamaica, or sitting in Trinidad, or Barbados, or Martinique, or Atlanta, Georgia, or any of the places of the Western land, what should you do? I'm gonna give you what some of the scholars are saying, modern scholars are saying today. One, they're saying that even irrespective of you living in France or in LA or in Canada, Calgary, or Jamaica, or Dominica, or any of the places, Haiti, you must find one ruler to give your bay'ah to. Now, how do you give the bay'ah? There's, as I told you, give it by the kalam, and you also by the orders. But there's other ways too. That's also sunnah. And one is by the letter. You can write a letter giving your bay'ah to a ruler. Now you don't have to do that today. I'm just talking about in yesteryears. But we had African Americans that actually did this. I don't know if you guys know about them. The Moorish group is, I think, mostly in the East Coast. They claim descendants of the Moors of Morocco, where I'm living, and they gave their bay'ah to the king of Morocco. That's right. You guys do the research on them. I have a problem with their Al-Qaeda, but we won't get into that. But these African Americans say that they are descendant of the Moors of Morocco, and that then they gave their bay'ah to the king of Morocco, and they did it by, as I explained to you. If you can't give it to them with a handshake in person, you send it by letter. This is another part of the sunnah. So what should you do? The scholar said, one, you find a ruler, and then you just give verbal. You don't have to go contact him, because you can't get close to any ruler today. Nobody can, with all of craziness going on, the assassinations and the craziness. No one's going to let you get close to him to give bay'ah. So you give bay'ah, and you give it again on Kitabillah and the Sunnah. And anybody who wants the words for that, you can get a hold of me, and right here, and I can give you, email address. I think I've given this in the past, and then you can learn these words to say it, or you can say it in English. But preferably, if you can learn to say it in Arabic, it's even better. And you give it, and you're satisfied. The second school of thought has been, some of the scholars have said, you in the West, you're living there. You can't give it to a ruler because you do not know any of the rulers and you don't live there. So therefore, you give it only you make that bay'ah to subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. Meaning that you give your bay'ah saying you swear that you will adhere to the Quran and to the Sunnah, and then you're satisfied. So those are the two trains of thought today from the modern scholars who's given this, because we have Muslims everywhere and we don't have one ruler. So I gave it to you again. You have two options. One, you can say, hey, I'm familiar with the King of Morocco. I know the brothers in the East Coast made bay'ah to him. Okay, I think I'm gonna make my bay'ah to him. You can do that. Or you can do what some of the other scholars have suggested, that since you live in LA or in Baltimore, you just say, look, I give my bay'ah to subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the Prophet upon his kitabillah and upon the Sunnah Rasuli, and you're covered. So I hope that you guys understand some of this, what I'm talking about today, the importance of it. You have an obligation and it has to be fulfilled. This covenant has to be fulfilled, my dear brothers and sisters that are Muslims. You can't escape it. And you that live in the West, if any imam come to you and tell you you make bay'ah to the President of the United States, you give him just what I told you today. And you ask them a question. How, imam, how can you make bay'ah to the President of the United States? He's not a Muslim. He doesn't practice he doesn't use the Quran. He don't use the laws of the Quran and the ways of the Prophet. How can I give him bay'ah? Because the condition of that is that. So you give them that. Or if he says, look, I'm the imam of the Islamic Center here in Philadelphia or in Atlantic City, New Jersey, you make bay'ah to me. You can't. You tell him, said, no, the bay'ah is only for the Muslim ruler. Now, there's some other bay'ah in time of war, but that's another story. We don't need to get in that because we're not in the war and so forth. And I wanted to clear that up as well. There's some other bay'ah that you give, but we don't need to get into that. How you doing, my brother? I'll give mine to. Okay, yeah, my brother here. He said here he's giving his to the Sultan of Sokoto because he's there in Nigeria. That's a wise choice, my dear brother. This is the bay'ah, to be honest with you, gives you peace as well. You know why? And if you read the verse, subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that, about the tranquility that you have when you give your obedience to the ruler. That's right. You know why? Because part of what you're saying has to do with heaven. That's right. Because what is the connection? Subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the Quran to what? To our prophet. He gave him revelations in two areas in particular, of the Quran and the deciphering of the Quran. That's heavenly. Okay. So when you use these words to talk about your adherence to that, it gives you that peace. And it's true. The Muslims know that, especially when you speak it in Arabic language, it gives you this tranquility. Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you that in the Quran. When you give this obedience, this alliance to your ruler. And I tell you, on a side note, when I read and I see the history and I read the Quran, sometimes I wish there was a way that we could go back 1400 years. I could be in front of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and I can give him my bay'ah. I mean, there's not enough money on this earth that could fulfill the joy that would give me. And I would have so much tears to be in front of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and I would give my bay'ah to him, that I would listen to him, obey him, I will follow the Quran, and I would follow the Sunnah. That is something I wish I could do more than anything else on this earth. And that's just a little side note. But the alliance, giving the allegiance to a ruler, does bring you some tranquility. It does. And so, in a nutshell, here, as we talked about that, again, to recap, the bay'ah is sunnah. It's part of the sharia. It's part of fiqh. It encompasses all of the jurisdiction of Islamic jurisprudence. The bay'ah is so important that our Prophet said in the hadith, which is authentic, he said, those who die without giving this bay'ah, you die in ignorance in pre-Islamic era. In the pre-Islamic era, the ignorance was off the charts. So you have to fulfill that. I gave you some ammunition, my dear brothers and sisters who are Muslims, what you can do to fulfill this obligation, but you have to. Every Muslim, I don't care what, you have to fulfill that covenant before you die. You must fulfill it. And I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you guys to do your research. You can talk to scholars. You can talk to other imams and ask them their take on that. And I would suggest that you do that. You can go to your local, students of knowledge and ask them about the bay'ah and see what they tell you to do. But if there's something they tell you to do that you don't understand, you can get a hold of me. And then I can also clarify if you don't quite understand something. If your imam or your master tells you something and you're not quite sure of it, you can't get the answers to it, you get a hold of me, and I will be glad to help you in that regard. But we all must fulfill it before we die. And we never know when we're going to die, right? So you can't say, well, you know what, I'm going to wait till I'm 60, 65 years old to give it. No, I gave you ammunition now. You have to fulfill it. I would fulfill it as quickly as possible. And you can go do your research, or you can go to the imam of your masjid, ask them about the bay'ah and see what he says, and go from there. If he says, look, from what my ruling is that you can give it to Kitabullah and Sunnah, and you don't need to give it to a ruler, you can follow what he says. If another imam of another masjid says, no, we have to pick the king of Morocco to give our bay'ah to, then you okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But you do the research yourself, so that way you'll feel good about that, okay? Because remember I told you, we Muslims, you have the right to question. I tell you that all the time. And whoever's talking like me, they better bring proofs, okay? And you have the right to ask for that. So I would make this as quickly as possible, because it is a requirement, because that hadith is scary. And you don't want to go in the grave, being questioned in the grave, and you're in a state of jahiliyyah, meaning ignorance, because you did not make this bay'ah, because the Prophet said that you need this covenant. So again, in the recap, how about the sisters? The sisters give the same bay'ah as well. They're not exempt from it. And if they came in front of the ruler, they do not shake his hand. They give a verbal obedience to Kitabullah and Sunnah, and that your work, the work that you do, of course, you will be in obedience to his commands. And the other part to this is also the Muslims like you guys who are far away. You can give your bay'ah in the distance without having to do the things that I was talking about earlier. Meaning, you men in particular, if you give the bay'ah to the ruler, you have to on Kitabullah and Sunnah, and you shake the hand to confirm it. The sisters, you don't have to do that. Secondly, If you live in California, or you're in Texas, or you are like the Moorish brothers doing in the East Coast, they sent a letter to the King of Morocco and they responded. This is, I forgot, about 12 years ago, or maybe a little longer than that. They sent a letter and it was responded to, giving their bay'ah to him. And they responded back to him. That's right. As a matter of fact, they sent some representatives from the Moroccan government to meet with the brothers there in the East. So we know that it's possible. And these brothers did their research and everything like this, and they followed the sunnah. They sent him a letter, and it was answered. And they accepted the bay'ah. So fulfill that. You fulfill this obligation, my dear brothers and sisters. You must do that. The third, you cannot give bay'ah to a non-Muslim. Cannot do it. That is more or less ridda. You cannot join the armies against the Muslimin. You cannot do it. The Muslims who, matter of fact, in all, no jurisdiction of the four jurisdictions of Islam okays a Muslim to go to a non-Muslim country, join that military to go fight Muslims somewhere else. That's ridda. That means you apostated. You apostated out. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't go to help a disbeliever to go fight another Muslim and go there also to shoot and kill him. You cannot. Now, someone will say, well, you know what? I heard on MSNBC that Muslims could do this and that. That's in time of war in certain circumstances. And Surah Toba, Subhanahu wa ta'ala is given conditions that a Muslim can fight another Muslim. You can't fight a Muslim somewhere to bring him to democracy. No, you cannot. You can fight him to bring him to the Sharia. If he's following the democracy and he's fighting you and he's doing things to you, you can fight him. Fight him in different varieties of ways, meaning verbally talking to him, arguing with him, trying to bring him back to the right way. And if it comes to that, which we don't have that today because we don't have the power to do this, then you would have, if you have to fight him, you fight him until he submits back to Kitabullah and the Sunnah. But you can't fight your brother to bring him to democracy or to communism or to Shintoism or any other thing. You cannot. You can only go after him to bring him back to Kitabullah and Sunnah. That is proven. And every school of Islamic jurisdiction has said that. That's important to know. Also, the Muslims who are living in the West, again, cannot give their bay'ah to the imam. They cannot give their bay'ah to the president of a Islamic club. They cannot give their bay'ah to the president of a scholarly Islamic group. They cannot give that. They can't give their bay'ah to a prominent scholar. You cannot do it. None of us can do that. The bay'ah, again, remember, is only for the Muslim ruler. Muslim ruler defining meaning that he has an army behind him. He's legislating under the laws of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is governing under the laws of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. He actually has borderline. He has border and he has people under him. This is a Muslim ruler. The imam of a masjid is not a Muslim ruler, or the president of a scholarly group is not a Muslim ruler. So you cannot give your bay'ah. I heard Muslims are doing that now. I heard even on the subcontinent, some of them are doing this. You cannot do it. I heard on the subcontinent they're doing it as well. I heard they pick in some imam and he's giving bay'ah. You can't, because India is not a Muslim country on top of that. There's no Muslim ruler, especially the president they have there now. We know he's not a Muslim ruler. He hates Muslims. So you can't give it to your imam there in the subcontinent. Can't do it. Or the imam in California cannot do it. So I hope I've touched on this today pretty quickly, but we're adults, as I always say. You do your research on this. Important, because the bay'ah is important. Now, let me say this, and I'll start to wrap this up. The Muslims are in a position that is tenuous, because you live in the West. And so therefore, you have to follow their laws. And then if you decide to come here to America to make your hijrah, remember the migration, and now you're in a situation where you are thrust. What do? We know the laws of the land in the United States. We know they have laws to stop the Muslims in many different ways. So we have to be careful. You still must be mindful of the U.S. laws. Be mindful of the U.S. laws. When you do this, I suggest that you do it in such a way that you do not do it in front of somebody who may be a informant, because there's laws of the United States about things like this of giving your allegiance to another ruler. Now, if you become a citizen of a Muslim country, outside the United States, you have to give that allegiance. They can't stop you for that, because if they have this agreement, they can have dual citizenship. They can't stop you from that. But if you don't have citizenship of a country, you must be very careful, because they have laws in the United States, and they're very serious laws. Because again, if you're black, they have many laws to fight you when you want to go away from them. And if you're Muslim, they even have more laws to go after you to keep you in line. And so they have these, the black extremist identity rules, and then they also have these the material support of a terrorist group. You got to be very careful all the way around. On a side note of that, but it's funny, but they don't legislate against the white supremacists. Huh? Have you noticed that? Only us, and they're doing all this killing and that stuff in the Capitol, and all 200 years of Ku Klux Klan activity and all kind of racist groups. Not one legislation has been advocated against them. Very interesting, isn't it? But they got legislation to go after us. I mean, they're very creative to put us in jail and kill us. They're very creative. And that's just a side note, my brothers and sisters, but this is a true fact. So be careful who you talk to about this. And if you do it, you don't have to declare in front of anybody. You can be inside your house and make your declaration, and with you and your family, no problem with that. But be careful when you do something like this, because you don't know who's listening to you, and they can get you in trouble. They can say you're supporting this, you're doing that. So be very, very careful of that. With that said, my dear brothers and sisters, I gave you a lesson today on the bay'ah. I'm hoping that I touched your heart today on this topic. And then I gave you some ammunition and knowledge, Islamic knowledge, like I try to give you every week. So you'll have something that you can use to strengthen you, and also to get you going towards Jannah, and to follow the Kitab and the Sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ. And this bay'ah is misunderstood. Many Muslims don't even understand it. They don't even understand the history of the bay'ah. I gave you the history of it today in my talk, how it kind of began and how it has evolved. And so I give you that, and so that way it help you to understand, because the Muslim is required to have this knowledge. You must gain the knowledge all the way to the time of your death. So as each time I go, I try to give you what I know and give you real Islamic knowledge. As I said, I don't give you pomp and colorfulness and everything else like this with all kind of graphics, things all over the place, beautiful scenery. I'm not gonna give you that. I'm an old man now. I don't have to do that. I won't do that. I'll just give you straight talk. I'll give you what's in the Quran. I'll give you what's in the Sunnah. I cut to the chase. So that way, my dear brothers and sisters, you gain the Islamic knowledge that you should gain. Because I don't like when you go to a program, it's colorful, pomp and pageantry, beautiful. But you walk away after the end of it, you say, what did I learn here? What did I learn today? And you walk away dazed and confused. The pomp was good, beautiful. You could see who came and who said something, but then you didn't get no knowledge. I'd be remiss if somebody come and say, hey, yeah, I didn't learn anything from you. I would be remiss. I would try harder so that person would learn. And this is what my motto is here, is to give you the knowledge so you can learn. And even the non-Muslims, so they can understand the Muslims. And that's my motto, to give you that knowledge, because that's what we should be doing as brothers and sisters, to give that knowledge to one another. so that way we can prosper. And that way for our younger generations who may be listening to us as we speak now, who need that guidance. And so they starting off good at an early age. They learn about the bay'ah. They can do their research. They learn about the Arabic, how you say this in Arabic. They learn who to give it to. This is important, my dear brothers and sisters, because we have a younger generation that's being influenced. They live there in the United States. And you know the trials and tribulations are great, even for us as adults. Can you imagine the trials and tribulation for a Muslim youngster or a girl? She's pretty or he's handsome. What the temptations are for them. You know what's happening. You know what time it is there. It's very difficult, and to keep them grounded is very difficult. You as a Muslim mother or father, you must be grounded in Islam so that way you can guide your son and guide your daughter to the straight path, because we have some beautiful Islamic children. I mean, I see pictures, I see things a lot. We have some beautiful, young, handsome brothers, teenagers in their 20s. And some of these brothers are nice looking. I can imagine the temptation that's happening with them. And we got sisters too, our daughters who are beautiful, beautiful sisters, beautiful. And I can imagine the temptation. So we have to help them, and keep them straight, that they don't fall into temptation. That's where the Islamic knowledge comes to. When they can come to you and say, yeah, what about this? Can I go date this girl? This girl is very beautiful. And can I date her? I should have the knowledge to be able to discuss that with my young son and say, no, son, you can't date this girl. Or my daughter comes to me and says, Dad, I see this boy here and I'm ready for marriage now. I want to marry, but he's not Muslim. Can I do it? And I should have this answer for my sister. My daughter, so that way she doesn't fall prey to sin and out of Islam. We don't want that. So my dear brothers and sisters, if there's anything here any questions, I'll be glad to fill that. And I'm glad, my dear brothers and sisters, that you did come to hear this, because the bay'ah is so misunderstood. It is so misunderstood. And alhamdulillah, I can give that to you, and that you can take this knowledge and you can start doing your research for this, because the knowledge is golden, and we need this knowledge in Islam. And when you show up here, I'm happy. And if I reach one of you, I'm very happy. And like I said, and I'm only here as a servant of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and to pass on his religion to you so you can understand it. And that is my mission, to educate and to help with that. And so I don't see anything here. Again, my dear brothers and sisters, thank you for coming to listen to your brother talk about this topic of the bay'ah. And as usual, my dear brothers and sisters, I pray that Subhanahu wa Ta'ala blesses us and he keeps us safe, and he gives us the right path, and that he limits the torment and the tribulations in the lands of the West, and that he blesses us and he keeps us safe when we come outside of our houses from all of the crime and everything, especially in the West. And I pray that Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will look after us, and he will give us that straight path to Jannah with his rahmah, with his forgiveness in his heart, and that we will get knowledge and learn how we can serve Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and that we can do right as Muslims. And also the non-Muslims, you learn as well. And hopefully Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will bless you and you come to Islam. I would love to see that. And but if not, you learn here, and it's okay. And with that said, my dear brothers and sisters, thank you again for showing up. Thank you again for listening to me. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And I will leave you with the words of Jannah. Salamu alaikum, rahmatullahi barakatuh.